Well, I'm back. It's Sunday, January the 10th, and I've had a lot of people asking me for updates, and for actually years now. And I kept thinking, well, things are going to play out according to physics. So I couldn't figure out why people want an update on something we know is going to happen. I mean, I certainly am completely convinced, which I'm going to cover in a little bit regarding my date of the pole shift. Right now, we've got a lot of changes afoot, most of them political, which I'm not going to comment on, other than to say that I'm confident in the outcome. You got to realize that you got to choose your sources that you believe in. And I know a lot of people are nervous. I get a lot of people requesting information from me. And I've been involved quite a bit in doing safe location consultation this last year or so. I've been doing it now at least 5, 6, 7 years. But now I'm charging for it. But people are nervous, and I think it's very important. But a lot of my writing on my Surviving the Pole Shift Facebook group has been based on oversoul and spirit, and anchoring in that. And I know that a lot of people don't necessarily relate to that, but I've been writing a lot about that. I always have, actually. So there's a lot of disinformation out there. If we thought there was a lot last year, there's even more this year. I'll give you an example. Solar flares. We don't care about solar flares, okay? We don't care about them. Okay? Because we have a magnetic field. So that takes care of the solar flares. So, okay, so now we get the step with the fact, and it is scientific fact. They're measuring the magnetic field of Earth. You know, they got all the satellites up there, and they come to these conclusions. And of course, the conclusions are often they're lies, or they're misdirects, or they don't know. Right, combination of any one of those three at any given time. So you got to know that all the government websites are spun. You have to realize all the phys.org and NOAA and all the science websites are all spun, right? So you know what to look for. You can pick out the facts, right? What I call the old science facts before, gravity and weights and measurements and all the old 19th century, 18th century, 19th century science. And you can't change that. I mean, it's a fact. So what you've got is a lot of disinformation spinning what's going on. So you have to back up and realize that your sources are important. Now, the best single source on the internet, I don't care what you think about aliens or ETs, they're my friends, okay? But Zeta Talk is by far the head and shoulders the best site you can get information from. Now, Zeta Talk only gives you a framework. They don't give you all the detail. You got to figure out yourself. So, but they've given us 17, I think we're leaning on 18 years now of detailed information, and it's ongoing. And so use that as your resource. Now, I've drawn on it for many years. Became pole shift aware in October of 2007. I've been studying and I began writing and advising, whatever, did my Planet X newsletters, started my video series, back to the Planet X newsletters for a while. and my Facebook group and my blog, and so okay, so source. Okay, so we've got the next thing is, okay, the magnetic anomalies are true, because what happens when you have a massive magnet come close to a smaller magnet, naturally the fields are going to merge, because a stronger magnet, even two equal fields are going to merge, get close enough. But you've got a massive magnetic field around, emitting, circulating through Planet X or Nibiru, and it's going to affect the magnetic field of Earth. So naturally there's going to be some changes. Now enter the moving magnetic, north magnetic pole. Now I'll get into that later in the video. So then you've got, you've got near-Earth asteroids. I mean, every day they're talking about some new near-Earth asteroid, NEA, right? And they show the course and stuff like that, you know. They have no clue, and they have no power to change the orbits, rather the incoming, 17,000 miles an hour of an asteroid. So if it's going to strike Earth, now we're not talking about Planet X, we're just talking about, you know, actually debris from the tail of Planet X is what's been hitting Earth's atmosphere. So they're just small rocks, maybe some bigger ones, but NASA, JPL, SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, whatever, they can't control these things. So why would they publish these near-Earth asteroids and showing the, sublunar and this and that, or trajectories? If they can't change it, we know they can't, they know they can't, then why do they publish NEAs? The reason is for distraction. They want to keep you thinking about NEAs instead of thinking about Planet X and the pole shift we know is coming. So you've got lots of different, HARP is dead, please, let's not go with HARP. It's done, okay? It's a military experiment, they shut it down, now they're pushing, they used to push it, they don't push it anymore. So you've got all these various bits of disinformation. Now Yellowstone super volcano, which it ain't, used to be in the news back, I don't know, it was for years. They pushed it. Big pictures, this big magma. Oh, lies. I'll tell you why. Because any volcano that's east of the continental divide on North America has had its magma conduits cut off or reduced to a tiny little trickle, and that's what you're going to get during the pole shift from Yellowstone. So a bit of ash, some gurgling magma, but it's not going to be a problem because the continental divide, which is all the western states and the western provinces, basically BC and Yukon, and parts of Mexico, has been pushing to the east for millennia upon millennia upon millennia upon millennia. Every time there's a pole shift, it gets pushed again. Each pole shift, bang, get pushed again. So it's cutting off the magnet conduit. So forget about Yellowstone. Now, you probably don't want to set up within 50 miles north of Yellowstone in wherever that is right now. I don't have it in my head. Because after the during the pole shift, North America rolls to the left. So north becomes west. Now we know this because of zeta talk, man. I didn't figure this out, okay? But it's physics, okay? So it rolls. So that means, so what happens, when that happens, is that North America, at least the western portion, or most of it, moves into a new prevailing wind cell, which now, in the aftertime, will be blowing, basically blowing ash wind. The wind would be basically blowing offshore. As we know, now we've got winds from the southeast, generally in Canada and the U.S. But that's going to change because we move to a different prevailing wind cell. So all the ash is going to blow out into the new Pacific. It'll actually blow out this way, actually. Okay, because it's going towards, essentially sweeping towards the equator. So I wouldn't set up maybe 50, 100 miles north pre-pole shift of Yellowstone, for example. But I'm off topic. No, I might have mentioned I was busy for the last year or so. Now, there's another thing. I'm just doing a little potpourri here, some different ideas I wanted to get expressed, and I'll go into more specific stuff later on in the video. We've got okay, so I get people that, I understand their concern. They get a volcano erupts or a bigger, some earth change happens, Planet X causes earth change happens, and they start wondering, well, is the pole shift coming sooner than, who knows when the pole shift is going to come. Now, I was given the date. I don't care what any of you say, okay? I don't care. But I'm going to give you a smattering of that. And that, now, for those people who want to argue with one of the greatest psychics on the face of the planet ever, the peers would be Mother Shipton and our good man back in the 50s, can't bring his name right now. At any rate, one of the greatest psychics on the face of the planet, one of them, has been quoted as saying, right here, 2023, the Earth's orbit will change. Nobody knows what this means. Now, frankly, it used to read, 2023, the Earth's orbit, rather, Earth will leave her orbit. Now, somebody's been going through and changing all these, and I've been searching for it. I can't seem to find it. It used to say, actually it's in my book, which I'll cover in a minute. I got it documented. It's in my book. I'll get into that in a minute. The Earth orbit, Earth will leave her orbit. Here it says, as I said, Earth's orbit will change. You can read it right there. We don't know what this means. Now, back in 2016, 2017, I was doing, probably 2016, I was doing the video. And the original web page opened up, had it opened up in the tabs. And I was talking away, and I clicked on a tab, on the wrong tab, and this popped up, and I caught my attention because I just started looking at her predictions. Anyways, after the video, I went back to it, and I thought, Earth will leave her orbit. That's what it used to say. Somebody's been changing this. I digress briefly. As I've been writing my book, last 2 years, I found, I go back and I found that more things have been changed in Wikipedia. So we know that Wikipedia has been compromised in the past. This is why you rely on good old science, right? Because they can't change Newton's laws. The stuff you can't change. Everyone knows that. So, anyways, so when I went back to read that, and I said, nobody knows what this means. I said right there. Well, I knew what it meant right away. There's only one thing in this solar system, as it is, that could pull a planet out of its orbit. Would be a larger, heavier planet passing by, and its gravitational force could easily pull a planet. Now, you've got to realize that Earth is very magnetic. It has a very powerful magnetic core, but it's no match for Nibiru, Planet X. So when I saw that, I knew. Now, this was before my February the 4th, 2023 pole shift date. When I saw that, I knew right away. Now, I also had people writing me over the years. Now, this is after I said I've started making rumblings about 2023 being the year of the pole shift. And I had people writing to me. I had two that I can think of that wrote to me and said they've always known that 2023 would be the year of the pole shift. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. There's more, but that's all I'm going to say. It's in my book. So one thing I wanted to comment on is the scale of events. So if you have a natural event, let's say you've got a coming rainstorm. So a few hours before, an hour before, we can look at the horizon and we see some dark clouds coming our way. You know, so we know we've got a few hours, maybe a day, because the weather reporting people are looking at the radar images and the various satellite images, and they know it's coming. So, but here, us on the ground, we see it an hour or two beforehand, whatever, see it coming our way. So the rainstorm comes and passes. Now, that is a certain scale. This time scale is what? Maybe a day or two of a forest storm, and it's done. Okay, now let's take a larger event. The larger the event that is about to occur, the more space and time it takes up in its influences. A common example I use to explain scale is if you had a child building a little bridge with sticks over a mud puddle. That is one scale. But then if you had engineers for a year designing, or a lot more, maybe 30 engineers or more, designing a bridge to go over a river that carries traffic on it, thousands and thousands and thousands of cars a day, and they build this bridge over a period of maybe a year. I don't know how long it takes necessarily to build a bridge. Probably a year, maybe 2 years. It doesn't matter. It takes a long time to build a big bridge that's maybe half a mile long or a mile long. Well, that's going to take maybe 5 years to complete. Maybe not, but it takes a long time, right? So that is a much bigger scale. So here we got a pole shift coming. Now, the scale of events is going to be beyond your imagination. It's going to be beyond what you can imagine. So as the earthquakes increase and the sinkholes and the volcanic action increases, and all the other oceanic events are occurring, you can't compare that to the duration of a storm, or it's not as close as you think. It takes a long time for a large scale event, a global scale event like the pole shift, to actually come to fruition. So that's what I try to tell people when they get worried about, things speeding up, or the pole shift is closer than they think, and it's you got to realize it's scale. Now we've got a prediction, not a prediction. We've got you all. It's a prediction. The Zeta talk. I knew the guy because he used to work for the Ning as an admin, pole shift Ning, and I knew the guy who made this up. This is Zeta talk information, and he put it into a calendar format. So we know, and there's historical records that these aren't official historical records. They are unofficial by people on the ground who suffered a prior pole shift or one before that, basically last pole shift, if I understand correctly or remember correctly. So all these things, this is not new. This is all written in old writings. So the Zetas have just sharpened it up and gave us a basic timeline. Now I want to touch on this in a bit when I get into the unfolding of the what I call is the well, you'll see it. So I took that information and I made this up, and I embedded more information into it. So I'll leave that link under the video to this calendar. But remember, the sequence of events is Zeta Talk, but the dates are mine. So I just wanted to rattle on a little bit about a few things. So I'll close this portion and we'll move into we'll have to try. There we go. To my main itinerary here. So we'll go through this step by step. Okay, so this is my basic itinerary for discussion in the video. And I'll be coming back to some of the things that people should keep in mind as they're getting ready for the pole shift. My book. I started it sometime in 2019. Somebody suggested I write a book. I started with writing a book about waking dreams, and I got into it a bit. And I was thinking one day that, hold it, I should be writing a book on the pole shift. Now, there's lots of books that have been written about the pole shift, and but I thought, well, I could bring my own perspective to a book about the pole shift. So I've been working, I guess, about around 2 years on the book. And right now, I did a count the other day, it's at 60,000 words. And I think it's about 2/3 done. And I'm hoping to get it out in the fall of this year before. I cover a lot of subjects in the book, and I have a lot of detail, and hopefully I try to put the relevant information about the pole shift in a way that people can understand. So I cover a lot of the pole shift itself is such, the subject is massive. It touches on the history of Earth in our solar system, the history of our solar system, and many other sub categories it's such a broad, it's amazingly broad range. I think I counted one time, I think I counted 7 massive basic concepts that pole shift touches on. I don't mean 7 little subjects like this and that. I mean massive concepts. The pole shift itself is a concept. The transformation of Earth to a different dimension is another concept. The holdback of the slowing down, the holdback, which I'll talk about later, of the Planet X Earth changes, cause Earth changes, as I like to put it. It has been put in place because of the die-off during the pole shift. There's 90% of the world's population apparently is going to die. So all those souls have to be sorted out at that time, and so because Earth is moving to a different dimension within 200 or 300 years, I think, that means that Earth is becoming a home for only light-oriented souls, which is another a massive sub concept. But the previous concept is that many souls have to make up their mind as to whether they're going to go for the light, or they're going to remain undecided, or whether they're going to, so they're sorting themselves out. So that was one of the reasons why the slowdown with the humming boxes and all the other the effects have been put into place to slow the Earth changes down, have been put in place, is to give those souls a chance to move, to make the decision. And there's other concepts as well, all built in there. So it's just really, really a monster thing to put together. And that's actually part of the reason why it's taken me so long is to try to fit all those different concepts into a book. It's just very, well, I'm getting it done, but it's amazing, really big. So that's where I am on that. Okay, so the next section here is on New Madrid and the European tsunami. Now, obviously, anyone who lives in the in the eastern states, or in the south, or on the eastern seaboard, are naturally very concerned about when the New Madrid will happen, because now there's an important thing to realize here, which I'll get into in a minute. But because you really don't want to be too far from your safe location, or being blocked from getting to it for the pole shift, and that New Madrid, depending on where you are, could affect that. Now, the New Madrid, of course, breeds the European tsunami. Now I'm going to switch to a different framework here. This is a map put together by basically the sequence of events by Zeta Talk, Nancy of Zeta Talk, and I just took it, put it on my own map. So you have a sequence of events that the Zetas have given us, and this is really a main framework. So if you're concerned about, and of course I understand why people are concerned about the New Madrid and the European tsunami, 9 and 10. Because, we know why. But bear in mind that India's got to sink first. Then the maritime South Atlantic, South Pacific maritime countries will start to crumble and sink. Then the Philippine plate will collapse. That may not be that obvious in the news. Then you've got the rolling of the South American plate, which would be probably in the news because of Panama is collapsing, and the locks are no good anymore. that would probably hit the news. Who knows what the news media? We know the news media is completely compromised today, and we know why. As I said, I'm not going to go into politics, but they're certainly not going to announce, at least in the state that they're in now, they're certainly not going to make any announcements like this. I'm hoping that the state will change, and so that more truth will be reported. I don't think that the pole shift will actually ever be announced, but if they announce these sequences, any one of these sequences, then you'll know, you have an idea. Now I'm going somewhere with this. Hold on for a minute. So then we have this sequence of events. So any one of these sequences, if you hear about them, then you'll know that a couple of weeks later or a few days later, the next one's going to happen. And then the next one, right? So after the New Madrid, we've got the number 10, which is the tearing of this continental divide here, the continental fault lines, and that is the European tsunami heading towards Northern Europe. So now, my take on it is that it's too early for this year, easily, for number 9, for the master or New Madrid adjustment to take place. I believe that these changes, these earthquakes occur in stages, and so the first stage is likely to be, I got that from, up here. I got that the first one is going to be fairly severe, but it's going to be nothing like the number 9 is indicated that I believe will be happening in the latter part of 2022. Maybe perhaps even into the fall of 2022. So we're going to have the precursor adjustments, but if it's likely to be fairly strong. So you're going to have some damage done to bridges and that kind of thing, and obviously anyone living in that area. This is being, well, okay, I'll explain this this map. I made this up. This is going to be in one of my future videos. I read through Zeta Talk, and I found every reference I could find to a New Madrid fault line. So to the best of my ability, I drew these all by hand based on what I was reading in Zeta Talk. So these, if you live on any one of these lines, now it will be in a video, and probably it will be in my next one, which is going to be on safe locations in the USA, a new, which you'll see a snap preview shortly. And also I'm covering, as I promised, for the Philippines and Malaysia, as I refer to it as the Maritime South Pacific island countries. And so it'll be a section in there explaining what's going on. I've got the map all set up. I just wanted to get this update out. So probably this spring we're going to have a New Madrid fairly strong adjustment, but it won't be the one. It can't be, you can see, because India isn't sinking, right? Is not sinking, right? So that has to go first, at least. So there's eight sequences that have to happen before we get to the main New Madrid. So if something happens here, realize it's only a start. And number two, it's the final number 9 that creates the tear here, that creates the tsunami. So the Zetas have given us a sequence of events as a framework, okay? So when we get one, it's going to be only just a start, and it probably will be fairly severe. But it ain't going to give you the European tsunami, because it can't happen until all these other sequences occur. So no, in my opinion, no European tsunami this year. I mean, you may get some other events, but that has to be within this sequence. Okay, so let's move on to the next frame. I'm online. Anyways, so this subject, the progress of Planet X and the timeline, kind of blends into the others. They all kind of blend in together. But I'll talk a little bit about, I'll use this image as an example. One thing I would have liked to have done, and I'm going to try to describe to it, I don't have it drawn, but I'd like you to just think, imagine rather. I want you to imagine a half moon circle, a large half moon circle. And then I want you to imagine a line, a straight line, passing through that arc. So you have an intersect point at the first, and then you have an intersect point where it's second intersect point. So you got a circle, then you got a line, right here, like that. So here's the first one, here's the second one. This is the trajectory, basic trajectory of Planet X. It's just basically straight. It does some jigs and jogs. You can find a Zeta Talk video, a fantastic video by Nancy and her assistants on YouTube, and it describes the jigs and jogs that Planet X has to twist and turn and move a little bit, but basically its trajectory is straight. Now, the reason why it's straight like that is because the orbit of Planet X has to obey two masters. The first, in no particular order, you have the first master, which is our sun, and the second master is this binary twin, the unlit nemesis, which is Earth's dark binary twin. So its trajectory through the solar system, that's why it's more or less a straight line, because it has to do a sling orbit, and it's obeying the gravity balance between the two suns and not just one sun. So that's why when people talk about show images of Planet X doing an elliptical orbit around the sun, it's like, okay, that's not how it happens. It's a sling orbit. It doesn't go that way. Somebody once said to me he said, "Oh, why are you hostile?" And I said, "Well, I didn't say this, but I'm saying it now. I'm not hostile. I'm just passionate. I just can't stand when people put stuff up about Planet X. They haven't researched. They're just regurgitating stuff they've seen, or they put stuff together without any research. That just bothers the hell out of me." So, anyways, so Planet X has already passed, intersected over Earth's orbit. Now, this half circle, this Earth, I should have forgotten to tell you, is actually Earth's segment of Earth's orbit. So it passed here during, and I've got to, maybe now's the time to show that. It is, I'll switch here. Yeah. Okay. This is set for the point in time when Earth came to a stop in orbit. Now, a lot of people have a problem with that. One of my favorite lines in Zeta Talk was, quote, "Orbits are not sacred," unquote, by the Zetas. It's true. I mean, Earth used to orbit out in the asteroid belt, but that's a whole other story. I don't think I touch on it in this particular video. But now it's at the third position from the sun. So what happens is that Planet X zooms in like this. As Earth. So here we are at about 32-degree angle. And if you were sitting on Planet X riding it in November, early part of December, looking out at the sun, which you couldn't because it's been shrouded by a serious heavy dust. That's another story, which I'm not going to touch on. But if you could, this is what you'd see as it approached towards Christmas of 2003. So Planet X can't ram into the sun because it's an orbital pass through the solar system. But what happens, of course, as the Zetas have said, Earth was coming around, and here comes Planet X. It pops up near the orbit of Earth and comes to a dramatic slowdown because of repulsion force between the sun and Planet X. So it has to slow down. But it's here. So as the Zetas have said, Earth cannot pass by a massive planet in its orbital track or near it. Now, Earth wants to stay in its orbital track based on its mass and based on its orbital speed, basically. So it wants to travel on this track, and it's going to require quite a force to pull it from this track. So it stays in the track. What does it have to do? So Planet X is, now this model doesn't entirely give us nowhere near the dynamics involved, but essentially you've got that straight line, and now we're moving forward. This is a conceptual, is that we have a straight line through the solar system like that. That's Planet X, boom, like that. Okay? Now, but it can't go that fast. It creeps very slowly. So as it creeps forward in its angled trajectory, it happens, Earth has to back up. Enter one of the other concepts I was mentioning earlier, I believe, and that massive concepts that I have in my book, and that is how the seasons are being simulated. Now, if you get a problem with that, come up with a better idea. But I'm telling you, truth is stranger than fiction. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. Earth has been backing up on its orbital track for 17 years. Now, in my book, I go into all the detail. What would happen? One thing is I calculated every season would be 7 years long. That's because of the speed that Planet X is moving clockwise, essentially clockwise, through our solar system. Earth wants to rotate in okay, let's go. Wants to rotate like that in an anti-clockwise. Okay? So they oppose each other. So Earth backs up. Now, the arc, we've covered the first one. The second one as Earth backs up, what happens? Go a little closer here. On its arc, remember, at this point, there's nothing that strong is going to pull it off its orbital track. So what's it going to do? It's going to back up in a curve on its orbital track. So as Planet X advances, Earth backs up. And this has been going on for 17 years. But at some point, Earth is curving, but Planet X is going straight. So as Planet X rises in the ecliptic, it's got now here I've got a 45-degree percent of vertical height, but that's not the angle that Planet X is exiting the solar system. It's a 32-degree angle. I'll get back to this. So what happens? Earth stops backing up at some point because now Planet X is higher, is moved off the orbital track and is higher in the northern hemisphere of the solar system. They call it solar system north. So what happens is that these two celestial bodies, Planet X Nibiru and Earth, at some point have to cross paths. And I'm trying to tell you that the pressure for Earth to back up will lessen as Planet X rises. At some point, the two have to cross paths. Now, and that's the point at which the pole shift occurs. And so Planet X is up here, and what happens is it's gravity force. Now earlier in my introduction, I was going on about the powerful magnetic field of Planet X, but here it's gravity pull that will lift Earth up, lift it up out of orbit, its natural orbital track, and that's when, boom, that's when you get the pole shift occurring. So at some point, I gleaned, it might have been in Zeta Talk somewhere, or it might have been channeled, I don't know. And in March, that Planet X reached 45% of its vertical height required to exit the solar system. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, because, but we know it has progressed, and why. Why do we know that? Because the tail of Planet X has been dumping what the Zetas are calling petrobubbles. So I'm not sure if anyone realizes this, but it was in one of my newsletters. But all this oil we have in the ground on Earth, it's not from rotting vegetation. They say the tiniest amount would be from it, but most of it is dropped during pole shifts, and it's because it's in the tail of Planet X. So petrobubbles have been showing up. Now this is these images are wonderful, but there's not much of a sense of scale here, so it's difficult to. But because the person, Alberto, is obviously has some fantastic equipment to zoom in on these images that he's taking of the sun, probably with very special filters. But anyways, this is what's happening: is the petrobubbles are falling from the sky, falling from the tail and entering Earth's atmosphere and causing images like this. And there are other images. So when you see petro bubbles in the news or in Facebook, or rather in Zeta Talk newsletters, then you'll know it's from the tail of Planet X. And so it is getting closer. It is moving. It has to move. But how soon will it happen? Let's go back to the... So, as I was saying in my earlier part of the video, that the pole shift has to occur, or intimating it, after India sinks. So all you got to do is watch for videos on India sinking, and you know we're well on our way. And I'm very sure that'll be happening sometime in the latter part of 2022. Now I've got some images here. Now here's a great image. This is an original image of the original Utah monolith, which is confirmed by the Zetas. Now, also, there have been copycat, of course, monoliths put up around the world, but this was a genuine one, and this one was put in place by ETs that are looking after Earth. Probably the same group that put in what they call the humming boxes that we had reports in 1999. I believe off Madagascar, and lots of them were put in along the west coast of North America. I remember reading an article where tons of holes were found, many holes, hundreds of holes were found at the bottom of the sea along the North American coast. And my idea is that those all had humming boxes in them. They pulled them out, but the monoliths are back to slow the approach of the New Madrid earthquake, the starter one. So is it progressing? Of course it is. But remember, we've got flags, and we'll go more into that in a bit. Okay, now further to this progress of the Planet X timeline subject, I'd like to just play this here.
Jakarta is sinking. Scientists say the sprawling capital of Indonesia, which is home to more than 10 million people, is dropping below sea levels at alarming rates. The government of Indonesia announced Monday that it now wants to move its capital from Jakarta to the island of Borneo.
So there you go. The Zetas announced in, I think it's 2010, that the tongue of is called the Sunda plate. This here is part of the southernmost portion of the Eurasian plate would be sinking. So that there you got admission, public admission of it happening. So they're moving to Borneo. So why to Borneo? Because Borneo is what? Here. So, which is not particularly a great idea anyways. You should be moving it to Papua New Guinea, which is not going to be sinking, because it's on the edge here. At any rate, we know that it's now been publicly admitted. So this kind of brings up the whole point of scale. You see, it started in 2010, I believe they first started publishing it, talking about the sinking of the Sunday plate. So here it is. We're 2021, and now, it's publicly admitted. So you see the scale is very broad of occurrences. Now this is going to increase in speed. The changes around the world are going to increase in speed because we got 2 years, a little over two years left to the pole shift. So this is a map that I was working on all last summer, and it's not entirely complete, but it is my new safe location interactive map for the USA. So I keep telling people the greatest danger is moving water during the pole shift. I mean, you're not going to set up intentionally on a fault line, but it's pretty difficult to do that because, well, it's just difficult to do that. It can happen. You don't want to be in these. I got another image here. Yeah. So we got this image here. So the yellow indicates known soft rock. These areas here, soft rock. So that's why these areas are particularly dangerous for earthquakes, because the rock is soft, so it'll split more readily. Whereas the Appalachian Mountains, obviously, and obviously over here in the Rockies and the Sierras are very rigid and old. And of course, they're not as old as the Canadian Shield, but they're much harder. So the greatest danger is moving water. Now, obviously, that's why we tell people to get away from the coast. But inland, the danger of moving water is even more, or just as dangerous. Now, people ask me about safe locations. Is a state safe? No, there's no safe state. They ask, is this area safe? Even the Ozarks, even at the Ozarks, you can't say, or the Appalachian Mountains, or an area. Well, there are a few exceptions. For example, Nevada and Utah are they're on that rigid plane. So as far as splitting rock is concerned, it's not going to happen there. Also in Oregon, I'm working on Oregon. Oops. Southeastern Oregon is like that. So, but generally you can't say a zone or a state, a zone or a mountain range in particular is safe, because people will think, well, anywhere I go in the safe area, you'd be fine. No, it's not true. So I tell people, please don't locate on or next to a river. So you're high up, like at the Colorado, you don't want to go anywhere near the Colorado or the Mississippi. I mean, you want to be far away from, because there's so many dams in the U.S. And Canada, but in the U.S. and reservoirs, it boggles the mind. And the amount of water that's going to be coming down those rivers during the pole shift is virtually unimaginable. because all those dams are going to break, those reservoirs. All their dam faces are going to split, and that water is going to come crashing down. So what happens then is you got, in some cases, and I believe this is what this is here, this little red, this spot here, that will be because of all the water coming down from Canada. Because there's huge dams in northern Canada, and they're all coming down these valleys, and they're going to come down that river. And don't quote me, I think it's the Columbia. So whatever river that is, it's right there. Okay, so so that red area there is, I calculated and drew it out, is actually going to be overflow that the river banks can't handle, because it's low and flat there, and because it's near the coast, and because it's an accumulation of water that'll all the dams breaking, they're all going to accumulate there. So what happens then, of course, is you've got rogue moving water. So your safe location shouldn't be lower or in some kind of a trough or a valley or a draw that it can accumulate water at a higher elevation than you are, and then flow down and wash you away. So rivers are very dangerous. Also, lakes are dangerous because because you know, if you're set up within 50 feet of a lake or 100 feet distance-wise, it's nowhere near enough. Now, if you're 200 feet or 150 feet above the lake, that'll work. But if you're only 20 feet in elevation from a lake, say, and let's say it's a mile away, and you're only 20 feet in elevation, well, if that lake expands because of all the water raining coming down from the sky, and that the rivers, its rivers will back up because they can't handle all the water that's either coming down from the sky or it's coming down from the tributaries that are feeding that river that drains from the lakes. It's all going to back up. So if you're within 20 feet, that water could easily overtake your safe location. So what happens now, you've got all your food stores, you've got all your equipment, your bedding, and now it's all wet, right? So that can seriously impact your safe location. So whether it's passive flooding water or whether it's rogue moving water, or worse, if you're in a mountain area and you're not on a flat area that's on rock where water and mud flows can flow towards you and wash you wash you away. That is another danger, mud flows. So early on in my safe location consultations with people, well, as I was thinking about, people were naturally contacting me because I was out there with my Plan X newsletter and stuff, you know. I realized that there's only specific coordinates where you're actually planning to be during the pole shift. Only specific coordinates can work as far as planning to be safe are concerned. So that's where I thought, well, people have to know this, because I still get people wanting, and I'm happy to give the consultation, but they're asking about properties that are right next to a river, and I'm like, well, it's not going to work. You have to find another location. So major rivers are an absolute death zone to be near. Any other little small river or a creek is also a danger. a lake, as I explained, and bog areas, which can fill very quickly and start to flood your location. But my big worry with people is mud flows and rogue moving water. So you've got to look upstream to see what's upstream from where you're at. So if you're at 1,400 feet in Pennsylvania and the nearest reservoirs are at 1,000 feet, and you look upstate, look in New York State to see which way the landform is sloping. Is it sloping away from Pennsylvania or towards? So if it's towards, then you have to look there to see are there any major dams up there that could add to the water flow in the rivers that are coming past your location. So you got to look at the surrounding landform to make sure there's no reservoirs or dams that can break where the water's draining towards you. And if so, you have to do a reasonable calculation to make sure you're several hundred feet above a nearby river, and all the other aspects you have to look at for safe locations. So that's the most important thing. Of course, it goes without saying, this is why all the states are all totally red, because they're death zones. Not only because of the seawater, don't forget that they're going to have the floods too afterwards. So this is going to flood to these areas. Now there are some areas that extends up a little higher, and that's because of other factors. Anyways, so this is my new safe location. It'll be interactive. You can zoom in, and I'll have some little pop-ups. So I just want to give a quick safe location overview. As I said, I'm doing it professional consults. You can contact me. I'll leave an email. Waking dreams, my favorite subject. Waking dreams, what they are, is an identical thing as a sleep dream, only you're awake during the day. You're not daydreaming, you're working, you're playing, you're drinking coffee, and the waking dreams will come to you in the form of visuals that you're drawn to look at. Or you turn on the radio and somebody says something, the first thing you hear, boom. Now you don't listen for it necessarily. It'll pop out of the texture. Now, the way waking dreams work, one sort of general look at it is that your day, so you get up, you have your coffee, your tea, you have your breakfast, whatever, you check your whatever, what's going on the internet, and then you get in your car and you go to work, and you work, you do, and then you go for lunch, and then you do your afternoon, you get back in the car and you call home and arrange for dinner or whatever, get home to see the kids, whatever. Okay, that is a fabric of your day. Okay, so imagine that as it's like a piece of cloth laid out on a table. It's pretty smooth because you usually, unless there's some little incident you've got to drive around or whatever, somebody says something to you or something, whatever. But basically, it's a fabric, a smooth fabric of your day. Now, waking dreams will stick up out of the fabric, so that you're going along, boom, something unusual happens. It could be an unusual sight, could be a little vignette of an experience or a sight you're seeing. As I said, it could be a bird song, or it could be a sign you see, or some words you see on the side of a truck passing by. So, but what is it that makes it a waking dream? Usually it's something that you've been thinking about, you're concerned about. And the waking dreams are always benign and wanting to help. So that's the way it works with waking dreams. They're always, so I find with my waking dreams, I'm thinking about something, and then my attention is drawn to an object or a word, what have you. And then so you have to play with it a little bit and work with it. So now you have to understand that if you remember your sleep dreams, even if you don't remember your sleep dreams, it's all the more reason you should learn waking dreams. But the sleep dream works along the same principle as a waking dream, only you're awake. There's really no difference. The only difference is that you're awake, as I've said earlier. The reason I'm pushing waking dreams is because that you can get specific information you can't get through research or reading or asking some other person about something or going to see a professional about something. A waking dream is specifically tailored for you and your life and for a benefit. Now, people get visions where they see their life playing out in some way in the future. Well, that is closely related to a waking dream, only it's a really concentrated, extremely concentrated waking dream. It's way concentrated. The type of waking dream events I'm talking about are little things that happen, little sounds, sights, things. Right? But it does expand into visions. So if you get your visions, then you're good. You get your visions, you're good. So gave me a consult last night to a woman. I was talking about waking dreams, and then she said, well, she had a vision of this for a safe location. I'm like, well, you got a vision of a safe location. And she was talking, and then we talked about something else. She came back, she said, well, she saw a beach. I'm like, well, that confirms only what the Zetas were saying in that particular area in the southern Ontario, where the river is going to expand to become a lake. Well, she was standing there in a vision looking at this there. We actually pinpointed right on the map, and right next to it was a projected water flow from the maps that you get, right? So, well, that was perfect. Well, if you're getting those visions, you don't have to worry about safe locating. You just have to move there and do all your normal precautions, but you've got your safe location already. It's been given to you, right? So, but waking dreams, if you learn to look for them, I could talk about them all the time, but they're there and they're definitely tailored for you. So I'll give you an example. I got so many examples to give about a safe location. About a waking dream. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the moving north magnetic pole. Oh boy, it's like another disinformation point. Well, it has been moving. Now we're concerned with what they call the dip pole, which is these red plotted points. Now again, this is in my book, and so the moving north magnetic pole, in my opinion, the reason why they why the media and is reporting on, or you see it in Facebook and this kind of thing, or some science, so-called science website run by the government or a corporation is promoting the whole thing about the moving North Magnetic Pole, is another distraction, disinformation source. Now, as I said, the North Mag has been migrating. But what does it imply? Well, there is another lie that they invented. I don't know when they invented it. I don't know. Sometime in around 2009, 2008, whatever, somewhere around there. Oh, the North Magnetic Pole is moving. So that means what's that mean? It means that the Earth magnetic field is going to flip 180 degrees. That's what the flip inquires and suggests that the north becomes south, the south becomes north. Now, right off the bat, that is absolutely impossible to happen. Now you say, what about the North Mag and all the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and all the changes in the polarity of the iron molecules found in the strips of the volcanic material that's cooled. They found it pointed 180 degrees and in different directions. Well, that's all detailed in my book. But I'll tell you that every time the Mid-Atlantic Ridge has a new layer of fresh magma seeping up from the core, from the crust, is because of a pole shift that's spreading the Atlantic. Now, the Atlantic wants to spread, and the Pacific wants to compress. And the reason for that is because ever since Pangaea, when scientists have all agreed that at one point all the continents were compressed into a single continent. Well, why would that happen? Well, you try to find the answer for that. They don't have an answer. All they talk about, well, it's being torn apart. So, and we know why Pangaea was there, because a Planet X moved, whacked, and created the ocean basin, Pacific Ocean basin, which is why the Pacific Ocean is so massively big, and why the Atlantic is so small in comparison. It created Pangaea, compressed all the continents, and a large part of Earth was released into space and became part of the asteroid belt, along with other broken up planets, and it was knocked into the third position around the sun. This is all in my book with sources. At any rate, we've got every time you get a layer of volcanic material cooling in the bottom of the ocean, rolling down the huge mountain range underneath the Atlantic, on the Atlantic floor. The magma will cool according to the dominating magnetic regime at that time, which is during a pole shift. So we know that every 3,600 or so years, we have a pole shift. Now, sometimes it's over. I think the last pole shift was over Greenland, and the one before that, I think, was over Canada, northern Canada. So it moves around, and it's a semi-permanent connection of the crust at that point where the geography moves. So, and that creates a new magnetic regime. So the cooling at the time, the magma cools in that direction. Now, there have been pole shifts in the past where the Earth is actually turned upside down. The crust is just rolled and then cooled, or rather set at that point. And Planet X keeps going. well then that was proof of a so 180 degree shift in the orientation of the molecules of a iron molecule in the mid-Atlantic ridge. If they're 180 degrees, it only is proof that it was during that. If you could carbon date those atoms or that rock material, that would align to a prior pole shift that happened where it was the pole shift was 180 degrees. It's only proof we've had prior pole shifts. Now, getting back to the whole flipping idea. Okay, so people who believe in the pole flip, well, frankly, don't have a mind for physics. That's okay. We all got different minds. However, a pole shift or a pole flip, or the flipping of the magnetic field, is absolutely scientifically impossible. Why? Is because the dominant magnet in our solar system is our sun. So if some magical phantasmic thing was to happen where the earth was to where the magnetic field was to flip, it would mean that earth rolled and not that the magnetic field flipped itself, because the sun won't allow it to happen, because the sun has its own powerful north and south magnet. It dominates the solar system, what they call a magnetosphere. It goes way past Pluto. So it's set like that. So a pole flip, so what you'd have to have happening is the sun would have to flip its poles first before, and then the earth would roll with it. So the whole solar system would roll like that. And you'd never know that anyways, unless you were an astronomer looking out, noticing a different set of stars in the canopy of stars, right? But that can't happen either, because the entire universe is a magnetic network. So that means the galaxy suns, the central galaxy suns, would also have to roll 180 degrees. In which case, the entire galaxy, Milky Way galaxy, would roll over and you'd never know the difference. So it's absolutely impossible, physics 101, for a magnet to switch its poles. I'll go into more of that in my book. So here we are back at the rundown to the pole shift flags. Well, as I was saying, you've got these sequences that have to occur. So we know, that Pakistan, for example, began to flood. The Indus Valley was flooding in 2009. And we know that the Sunda plate, as showed you by the video earlier, has sunk and is sinking, and it's been admitted. So you can see the scale of events is quite broad. So you just have to watch for these sequences, and we're nowhere near number one. It's happening very, very slowly. Okay, seeing the blue Kachina and Planet X. Okay, let's look into that. Okay, here we go. Seeing the blue Kachina and Planet X. Well, first I want to explain a few things. Okay. Earth. Oh, this is just conceptual for now. let's say you're new to this. This is just pure concept. We'll bring it down to the proof in a second, in a minute or two. Okay. Zeta Talk told us years ago that Earth has a companion on its orbital track, and that is close to Earth-sized, and it happens to be a dead planet. Why it's dead is not important. Close to the same mass. So if it's the same mass and it happens to be passing by, probably it was one of the moons of Planet X. It almost guaranteed, because when during the thousands and thousands of time that Planet X has passed through and around our solar system, it's mixed it up pretty rough with some of the planets here, which is the reason why actually if you study the axes of Uranus and its rotational direction is actually laid on its side. So imagine a planet laying on its side like that and like that. That's what it's like with Uranus. It's actually on its side. Why? Because of prior passages of Planet X tipped it over like that. Pluto's orbital track is tipped about 17 degrees to the ecliptic. So here's the ecliptic here. Say this is the sun. Well, this is the sun here, but let's assume this is the sun. This would be the ecliptic here. Most of the planets, all of the planets except for Pluto, orbit more or less on the ecliptic, on a disk. However, Pluto is tipped 17 degrees. Get this thing to work about like that. So this green line would be something like the orbit of Pluto is on an angle like that. That was also caused by a prior passage of Planet X. So when Planet X comes through the solar system, it mixes it up pretty badly. This time, Earth is protected, but the pole shift is moving forward. Trust me, is moving forward, because it has to clear the planet of the souls that are not ready to stay here, to reincarnate here, because Earth is going to become a planet for light-oriented souls. And for that to happen, it has to move into a higher dimension, which is a brand new universal thing apparently. Brand new, never been done before. Like I say, there's a lot of big concepts going on here that is so far beyond status quo that it's just mind-boggling to even try to put it into words. Okay, so we've got a what is referred to in Zeta Talk as EDT, or Earth's dead twin. Now we're not talking about, don't confuse that with our sun's binary twin, which is an unlit, cooled star. We're not talking about that's also unlit. We're talking about a planet, Earth-sized approximately, that probably during a passage of Nibiru and an entourage of moons, it fell into orbit into Earth's orbit with Earth. Now, what's going to happen when you've got two planets with roughly equal gravitational and repulsion forces? Yes, there is a repulsion force. That's why the moon stays up in orbit, and why science, modern human science, so-called late modern man science, cannot explain why the moon stays up in orbit. It's repulsion force. It's more or less the opposite acting particle of the gravity particle. Now, there are physics involved. The between the speed of a planet and its mass, and in its interaction, the angle of interaction with planets, sometimes the repulsion force is overcome, and an asteroid will hit the surface of Earth. But essentially you get two planets with the same similar mass on the same orbital track. What's going to happen? They're going to equalize. So what happens is when Earth is over here, EDT is here. So as Earth moves in its anti-clockwise motion, naturally the forces balance out, and that puts EDT over here. So, and if Earth is over here, then EDT will be here because it is constantly balancing each other out. Now, for those who have a problem with this, just wait, okay? You got about 2 or 3 minutes and I'll get right into the proof, okay? And it'll be like, you have to believe it. Okay. So, EDT is always on the other side of the sun. That's why we don't see it. Okay. Now, so what happens when you have a planet, a heavy, powerful, with powerful forces of gravity, magnetics, and many other particles flowing around it and through it that man is not aware of, enters into an orbit of Earth, or close to, as I was saying earlier. It zooms in. It's got to come to a stop or an extreme slowdown because of the particle flows near the sun. It's just too much wind for it to carry on, so it has to creep through past the sun. As I said earlier, Earth came to a stop, and we know that, again, by Zeta Talk. Now, how the seasons are being simulated, maybe I'll go into that, but that's a different, but they are being simulated. Okay, Earth comes to a stop. Another concept that people have trouble with because seasons have been ongoing. But let's assume for now that Earth comes to a stop and that the seasons are being simulated. I'll go into it. Not now, but in a second. EDT is over here. And so wherever Earth is, EDT is always opposite, right? So, ironically, it was in 2004 when EDT started showing up in the in various satellite output, whether it was they were studying. There was a site, I can't remember the name of it, but the Planet X cover-up took it down. Now there's a new one up, but I haven't been. I see them occasionally. I see images of it. It's showing the magnetosphere being swept back by the powerful solar wind of the sun. But back in 2004 or 2005, I remember seeing an image of a dot in the flow, and it was confirmed by the Zetas that it was EDT. Now hold on. I don't have that for you to look at, but it's there. But it was available. You could probably find it. I didn't take the time to find it. However, the Hopi tradition has something they call, I'm speaking generally here, Kachina dolls. And in the Hopi Indian culture, they make up a doll. It could be for a marriage, uh, any social event or any a storm, a dinner. I mean, for any event that they experience, there's a potential doll that can be made up. Now, I don't say that they make up a doll for everything, but they have many, many what they call Kachina dolls. Now, they have something that's called a blue Kachina doll. The blue Kachina in the Hopi tradition precedes the red Kachina. Now, the red Kachina is the appearance of Nibiru in the sky. So the blue Kachina precedes the red Kachina. Now, that's in their culture. This was sent to me by a gentleman who lives in India. He took this himself. This is an image here, right here, of. Now you may not see. I'll switch to the presentation. Here you can see a planet in the sky. Now this is not a lens flare because it would be a different color. He saw it with his own eyes, and he took a photo of it. Now I know this guy. He contacted me, and this was a genuine catch. Please ignore these red dots. They were something that was an anomaly that was added when I was making the video the picture. So this is the blue Kachina. Now this is in the western sky. Now why is it in the western sky? Now that's what I'm going to explain. This is an actual image of the blue Kachina. No, it's not here. It's not blue, but according to Zeta Talk, it appears from yellow to blue, depending on the lighting conditions and its declination above the horizon. But and then the coloring is also because it's a dead planet. It's a black rock planet, so the lighting will be from blue to yellow and not red, apparently. So that's why it appears kind of bluey gray here. Okay, so let's go back to our model. Just give me a minute here. Let me find it. Okay. So, Earth comes to a stop here, say, December 23rd, 25th, 2003, according to Zeta Talk. What's the EDT to do? Well, it keeps orbiting because it's nowhere near where Planet X is over here. Well, anyways, this is not to scale anywhere near. This is all conceptual right now. So EDT keeps orbiting around the orbital track. What happens now? So now it encounters its brother stopped in orbit, and in fact probably at that time would have been retreating towards it. So EDT had no choice but to come to a stop. And ever since about 2004, it's been dithering out here, back and forth. According to the particle flows, it dithers back here. So the blue Kachina doll and the sightings of the blue Kachina in the western sky are proof positive that Earth has come to a stop. Now, back to my model. So now, Earth has come to a stop, and blue Kachina is hanging out here. At some point prior to the pole shift, EDT does pop around Earth and continue its orbit. Right, because its pressure is to keep orbiting, right? Because of the sun and because of other influences, it wants to continue to orbit. So it dithers and dithers and dithers until the conditions are right, and it escapes what the Zetas call the cup, and it continues to orbit. And at that point, the blue Kachina will be seen in the eastern sky. Now here I'm talking about the northern hemisphere. So why is it, so do you see the fact that this is the western sky? Because this is where, well, let me just tip this. No, yeah. So the trailing sky is where the sun sets, because the rotation of Earth is east to west, east to west. It rotates like that. You can see it here. So I've got it wrong. It moves. It rotates west to east. That's why the west sees the sun after the east. Okay, so we have a planet that orbits, rotates from the west to the east. So this side, if you are facing west, that's why you see it EDT dithering out here. I hope that's understood then. Earth rotates west to east. So that's why it appears behind Earth. However, Earth is actually moving this way very slowly, but it's still the western sky because of this direction here. I hope that's clear. That's why the EDT is seen in the western sky. That's also an indicator of the timeline of the approach of the pole shift. Because when you see EDT in the eastern sky, that means we're into the last weeks, and I believe that is in my calendar. I've got here. So see if you, yeah, here it's right here. So at some point it's shown. It's sometime in December or something. Yeah, sometime in early December. It'll be seen, I believe. Yeah, early December. So that's where I embedded that in this calendar. Okay, so we've got ED now. Okay, now people ask me, have been asked, and over the years, why can't I see Planet X? Well, number one, images of Planet X have been showing up for so long now. There's so many pictures of Planet. Now, there's also 100 times more false images of people out there on the internet claiming that pictures of ghost images of the sun. Somebody points a camera at the sunset and they look at the image and they see an orb next to them. They call it Planet X. And then you get sun dogs. I've even seen people think that a reflection off of a city building in a distance of the sun was Planet X. And the worst is when you have people claiming that Planet X is when you get a cloud, you get a sky full of cloud. You get breaks, thin spots, right? And there's a sunset, and the light is reflecting all the way through the cloud, right? Many different directions, right? And then they're claiming that it's Planet X. And so when you've got a sky full of cloud, you can't say that something is, unless you have an extremely excellent eye and a very steel trap for a physics mind, where you could possibly say it was 50% chance it was a, but a sky full of cloud and the sunset and there's some lighting here and there, you can't definitively say that that's a sighting of Planet X. Now, I'm coming to a very important point here in a second. Here's a picture of Planet X right here. It's at the right position at the 4 o'clock. It's fuzzy. It's close to Earth. If this is out here, it ain't Planet X because it's too far from the sun. It's because of the angle. Planet X always appears, well, I used to say always, back in the day. But now we're seeing it is starting to shift. But the essential position is about the 4 o'clock position. And there's a lot of astrodynamics that explain why we see it at that position, but it's very complicated to explain and to understand. It just depends where you are on Earth. It depends on so many factors. But this is its general appearance in the northern hemisphere. If you see it here at the 8 o'clock position, you're in Australia. Okay. Now, other sightings of genuine sightings of Planet X effects are moon swirl light tubes, monster personas, and a number of other possibilities. Those are genuine light objects, not necessarily a corpus, but they are genuine Planet X effects. Now, Planet X is, I'm going to take a number out of the sky. I'm going to think, I've been saying it's about 50 million miles out. It could be more like 75 million. It could be probably not less than 40 million miles away. The tail will swing close to Earth. It's very long. But the corpus is out approximately, it's just an approximate, just to give you the concept, about 50 million miles out. Okay. So, can you see a fly a mile away? No. Can you see a fly 100 yards away? No. Could you see a fly maybe 50 yards away? Probably not. But seeing Planet X from Earth, number one, it's close to the sun. It's in the sun's glare. So how are you going to look into the sun? You have to have filters, right? So you have a lucky strike here. The sun sets, its glare reduces. It gets into the red spectrum, more like Planet X tends to glow, it tends to be in the red spectrum. So the sightings are at sunsets and sunrises. So that's why you see it in the evening or setting, dusk, or sunrise. Sunrise or dusk, right? Okay, but seeing Planet X and Earth is way more. It's like seeing a fly 100 miles away. Okay, it's very difficult because of the excuse me, because of the distance. So how are you going to see it? As I was saying, you have to see it when the lighting is right, and basically around the lighting. So that's why it's very difficult to see. But In my opinion, you don't want to see it. It's there. We know it's there. The history is there. Get ready for the pole shift. Stop looking for the pole shift. Stop looking for Planet X and get ready for the pole shift. Forget about trying to see Planet X, please. All right. So a progress on the Indo-Australian continent. Well, you know, we know I've had, it's in my book again, I had a gentleman write to me about a year and a half ago. He lives somewhere in this area here, on the edge of the outback. Now, please don't quote me on this, but I know he lived, I remember looking at his location. He gave it to me, and it was somewhere west of the Blue Mountains, near where the outback starts to the plains, right? So he writes to me. He says, I was in my shop one day. Suddenly, all around me, this beautiful blue-green water rose up to my neck and over my head, and he started to choke. And this lasted for a couple of minutes, or a minute, and then it subsided. And he was confused by that. The next day, he was going to town for something, driving along, and it started to happen again. Beautiful blue-green water started to creep up, and he was having trouble breathing. It was a vision, and he knew it was a vision, and it was a vision of the Indian Ocean passing over the outback to approximately here. And this is the Zeta Talk 675 flood area here. But it's worse than that, because you see the southern Australia is tipped down. So he had the vision, and he wrote to me and gave me the details in my book, the detailed explanation of what he experienced. You've seen the video that Jakarta is moving that Indonesia is moving its capital to Borneo. So that's a progress. So we know the plate is tipping. Now, have we heard anything from India about flooding? I haven't seen anything, but it most likely is. It has to be, because India is at the extreme end that's going down under the Himalayas, which is why, of course, the Himalayas are so massive, because each pole shift, it jams this for the last many millions of years. I did a video on India. I had it almost done, and I lost my hard drive. I had videos. Anyways, in that loss, I had a video. I found it and I put it in the video. It showed how the subcontinent, this whole Indo-Australian plate, was somehow near millions of years ago down near Antarctica, and over the years it slowly has been creeping through each pole shift. It's been creeping up, and I don't know when it was, how many million years ago it impacted against the Himalayas, and ever since then it's been under a lot of pressure to push under the Himalayas, which is why the Himalayas is so massively huge. All that compressed rock from this plate being pushed underneath and lifting up the Himalayas. So there you have it. Go back to what I was going to talk about. Somebody was asking about the most important things to remember about getting ready for the pole shift. It's your safe location. You've got to make sure that you're well positioned above any possible rogue water or mud flows coming from above, or or any moving water. That's your safe location has got to be high and dry on rock. That's one of the most important things. Now, you have to understand, when a pole shift comes, it's going to strafe the ground. There's going to be fire. There's nothing going to be left of your home that's sitting above ground. I came up with the idea in my book that you could set up a bunker right in your house. That way your house would be a buffer. I used to think it was a bad idea, but I changed my mind because I think that your house will be pretty much blown away, but it'll give you a little extra time prior to the pole shift. Why? Because if you had a bunker in your house, a cement bunker, then during the final weeks before the pole shift, you're going to be able to run out and cook something up in the stove. Make some coffee, run back into the bunker. You got to go out and use the bathroom, so you can run out and use the bathroom, run back. So it gives you a little bit of comfort going into the pole shift. Now, will the house collapse on top of your bunker, your steel bunker? You know, buy a tornado shelter and set it up in the garage. But make sure that your bunker or whatever your final safe bunker is, it's on ground level. You don't want to put it too low in the house. So that's one way of but the house is going to be gone. So what you do is as I'm telling people, you buy a high quality tent, and with food and coffee and clean water and a little propane stove or whatever and some food and then some cookies and whatever, and put that all in a container that'll sit, like a plastic with a lid on it, a heavy duty barrel in the tent, and bury that in the ground before the pole shift outside, or maybe in the house in the basement, and put it in some safe place in the basement, what have you. And you also want to have a prefab home that you can set up in the aftertime for your first house. Some type of little prefab home you put together, and you got a little abode. Or maybe you're going to buy a ton of 2x4s, 2x6s with plywood and bury that so you can rebuild your house. Whatever, you need a temporary home with food, and you need a prefab or something that you can have an abode after the pole shift. And you have that buried, protected, so you can get at it after the pole shift and rebuild. A lot of talk about caves. Caves are fantastic. They've endured virtually thousands of pole shifts of various intensities. So the caves are good. You got a cave on the property, fantastic. One thing is not talked about that much is UV radiation after the pole shift, because the pole shift reduces the atmosphere. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've been a hard time finding it again, but it's about 40%. So what will happen is that in the ensuing months, the sea will rebuild the atmosphere because of all the intense life that'd be going on in the sea. So that'll build the atmosphere back up, no problem. But I think it's about 6 months to a year where, most especially in the first months after the pole shift, you're going to have a lot of UV radiation coming from the sun, getting through the atmosphere. So the deal is in the aftertime is you work during the night and you sleep during the day. I've always said you should have somebody as a sentry who is awake during the day and sleeps at night, so you can you always have a sentry, depending, a watcher, but yeah, so UV radiation immediately after the pole shift, and then you're obviously going to have to be very careful about going out within the first month, or not at all during the day. Moving fresh water, seawater, big danger, and I came up with this idea, it's in my book, to have I say V-shaped trench, but an L-shaped trench. Why L-shaped? Well, people often ask me which direction the winds will be blowing in, and Zeta Talk has made it clear that they're blowing from many different directions. So we can second guess and maybe guess at possible directions, but you really should have an L-shaped trench. Why? Because if you're in the trench and the pole shift is approaching within a few hours, and you're noticing that the wind is blowing in line with your trench, that is up a trench like that, so you may or may not have some way of blocking that wind so you don't have rock and wind and dust and blowing down into your trench. I mean, you could set up something where you've got baffles to protect you from the side, but if you had an L-shaped trench, then if you realize if 2 hours or so before the pole shift the wind is blowing right into up your trench, you can move around into the other a 90 degree trench, and so you can get protection. Maybe you want to dig a trench in an arc, so you have more options to escape the wind blowing into the trench. So it's a lot of things to touch on, but I wanted to do an update and some ideas. And the pole shift is going to be February 4, 2023. I haven't decided, I haven't figured out yet whether whether it's the calendar date. Now understand that as we get into the last weeks, probably the last months as well, which would be sometime, after the summer of 2022, the Earth's rotation is going to begin to slow. And then now the calendar is out and your clocks are out. And so I've been telling people you should get a mechanical 24-hour clock, not an electrical one, not a computer one with a chip or whatever. It's got to be a mechanical, ideally a mechanical 24-hour clock with a calendar function. That way you can keep it going and it'll tick all the way through this, even though our bodies might think it's January the 2nd, but really it's the 24th, right? Because of the slowdown of the rotation. So at least you'll have a sense of time from one day to the next, and you'll be able to calculate the calendar function with the clock for the pole shift on the 4th. That was my initial thinking, that's the way it would play out. Otherwise, if we were to include the slowdown of Earth, then it would be almost impossible to know at the rate of slowdown at any kind of calendar function at all. So at some point, I'm probably going to do an update on this in some video, is to have it confirmed that the the pole shift occurs on the old natural timekeeping way of a calendar, in which case you can only tell with a mechanical 24-hour mechanical clock. Again, otherwise, the other method, which I'll announce it at some point because I'm not sure, if we're seeing the sun and it's going to be rotating and tipping, the Earth is going to be tipping, it's going to be very difficult to determine when a day passes. Because if the sun hasn't come up for 3 days, it's pretty difficult to determine which day you're at, because it's very confusing. So that's why I will give an update on this some point. But my first feeling on it, I think I'm going to stick with for now until I get an update, and that will be that the February 4th, 2023 will be on the old time system as it clicks through with a 24-hour clock. And I said I will update on that. So that's it, and thanks for watching. And as I said, I'm working on the USA and the maritime southwest island nations section for the pole shift, and after that it'll be Germany and Belgium and the Netherlands. So thanks for watching, and I bid you farewell, and we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you.